The sun had just risen over the vast African plains when tragedy struck. A powerful storm had swept through the night, tearing trees from the ground and flooding burrows. When the dawn finally broke, the savannah stood silent, except for the faint, desperate cries of a lion cub trapped beneath a fallen acacia tree. His mother, a lioness named Nura, paced in circles, her paws bleeding from clawing at the thick roots. Every attempt to lift the trunk ended in failure. Her pride had fled to higher ground during the storm, leaving her and her only cub, Kovu, behind. Now the little one's whimpers grew weaker, his golden fur matted with mud. Nura refused to leave. Hours turned into an eternity. Hyenas began to circle in the distance, drawn by the scent of fear and damp earth. The wind carried their laughter, cruel and cold, but the lioness did not back down. She stood guard over her trapped child, her muscles trembling, her roar echoing through the valley as both a plea and a warning. What happened next would not only change her fate, but it would challenge everything the wild believed about strength, sacrifice, and love. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications, because this story will show you a side of the animal kingdom that no one has ever seen before. The storm had come without mercy. For hours, lightning carved through the sky and thunder rolled over the plains like the growl of an angry god. When it was finally over, silence covered the land, the kind that follows disaster. The ground was drenched, the grass flattened, and the air thick with the scent of rain and fear. At the edge of the flooded valley, a lioness named Nura searched through the chaos. Her golden fur was soaked and streaked with mud, but her eyes, deep amber and fierce, glowed with desperate determination. She had lost sight of her cub Kovu during the storm. He was only a few months old, small and playful, too young to understand that nature could turn cruel in a heartbeat. "Kovu," she rumbled softly, her voice trembling against the emptiness. The wind offered no answer. She moved through broken branches and uprooted shrubs, her paws sinking into the soft earth. Every step sent ripples of exhaustion through her body, but she pressed on. Somewhere ahead, faint beneath the sounds of dripping leaves and settling mud, came a small, muffled cry. Her ears perked up instantly. She froze. There it was again, a whimper, thin and frightened. "Kovu." She followed the sound, her heart pounding harder with each step until she reached a fallen acacia tree. Its thick trunk was half buried in mud, its branches twisted like the fingers of a dying giant. And there, under the heavy mass of wood and tangled roots, she saw him. Her cub, Kovu's tiny body, was pinned beneath one of the lower branches. His eyes were wide, his breath short, his fur drenched and trembling. He let out a weak, pitiful mewl when he saw her. Nura's chest tightened. She pressed her paws into the ground and began digging furiously at the mud, trying to loosen the roots. The wood was too heavy. Her claws slipped, her muscles burned, but she didn't stop. She pushed, pulled, and bit at the bark until her gums bled. The tree didn't move. "Kovu, I'm here," she growled softly, her voice breaking with each word. "I'm here, my son." The cub whimpered again, his breathing quick and shallow. The sky darkened with approaching clouds, not from rain but from vultures circling above. They'd seen enough storms to know what followed. Death. Nura snarled at the sky, her teeth flashing, but she knew the vultures weren't her biggest threat. From the hills came the low, eerie laughter of hyenas. Their voices carried on the wind, closer with every echo. She froze, listening. 3, maybe 4 of them. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but she couldn't. She stood between the cub and the open plain, lowering her body in a defensive stance. The first hyena appeared from the tall grass, a large male with a torn ear and a grin that reeked of hunger. He was followed by 2 others, smaller but no less dangerous. "Well, what do we have here?" The lead hyena crooned, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "A lioness." All alone, Nura's growl rolled like thunder. The sound made even the wind hesitate. The hyenas stopped several feet away, their yellow eyes flicking from her to the trapped cub. The leader tilted his head. "That's unfortunate," he said, smirking. "The little one looks Stuck, another hyena chuckled. And she looks tired, Noura's tail lashed. Come closer, she hissed, and you'll find out just how tired I am. The hyenas laughed, circling slowly, testing her resolve. They had the numbers, and they knew it. But Noura had something stronger, purpose. Every instinct, every breath, every ounce of her being burned with one truth. She would not lose her cub. The leader lunged suddenly, snapping his jaws. Noura countered with a strike so fast it cracked through the air. Her paw connected with his muzzle, sending him sprawling backward with a yelp. The others froze, shocked. She roared, a sound that tore through the plains like fire. It wasn't just rage, it was love weaponized. The hyenas hesitated, but only for a moment. Hunger overrode fear. They began to advance again, slower, more cautious. Noura's sides heaved with exhaustion. She couldn't protect Kovu and dig him out at the same time. She had to choose, fight or rescue. The leader grinned again, blood dripping from his nose. You can't do both, Lioness. But then something unexpected happened. A shadow moved through the grass. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. Out of the darkness emerged another hyena, smaller, limping slightly, her fur streaked with mud. She didn't laugh. She didn't sneer. Her eyes met Noura's, and something ancient and wordless passed between them. It was Shira, a hyena who had once defied her kind, long before this day. The old stories whispered her name like a ghost of compassion that lingered on the wind. The other hyenas growled in irritation. What are you doing here, Shira? The leader barked. This isn't your concern. Shira stepped closer. Leave her, she said quietly. Take what's left of the carcasses by the river. This one's not for you, the leader laughed. You'd protect a lion now? You've gone soft. Shira didn't flinch. Maybe, she said. But at least I'm not blind. The pack hesitated again. The air grew heavy with tension. Finally, the leader spat into the mud and backed away, glaring at her. You've lost your mind, he hissed. This will come back to bite you. Shira didn't respond. She waited until the others disappeared into the darkness before turning to Noura. The lioness remained still, her body tense, uncertain whether this new figure was friend or foe. Shira approached slowly, lowering her head. You can't lift it alone, she said, her voice hoarse but steady. But together maybe we can. For a long moment Noura simply stared at her. Then she nodded, just once. Two natural enemies stood side by side, united not by instinct, but by something far greater, the will to save a life. As the moon rose above the plains, their silhouettes bent over the fallen tree, two mothers, one act of courage, and a cub who had yet to see the miracle waiting beyond the mud. But could they make it before the next danger arrived? The night air was thick with dampness and tension. The moon hung low, pale and bruised, spilling cold light over the wreckage left by the storm. The fallen acacia tree loomed like a beast of its own, gnarled, immovable, half swallowed by mud. Beneath it, little Kovu whimpered softly, his breath shallow, his tiny claws twitching weakly against the heavy branch pinning him down. Noura stood over him, trembling from exhaustion. Her muscles ached from the hours she had spent digging, pushing, pulling, and failing. Her claws were cracked and bleeding, but she couldn't stop. Every heartbeat of her son's fading whimpers cut through her chest like a knife. And then, at the edge of the clearing, the hyena stood, her unlikely savior, her enemy, her last chance. Shira moved closer, her steps slow and deliberate. Her fur was soaked, streaked with old scars and the dirt of a life spent surviving on the outskirts. She looked fragile, but her eyes, they were alive with something Noura hadn't expected to see in a hyena's gaze. Empathy. I know you don't trust me, Shira said softly, her voice almost blending with the rustle of the grass. But I've seen what happens when we look away. I won't let it happen again. Noura said nothing. Her amber eyes followed every move Shira made, ready to strike if the hyena showed even a flicker of deception. But Shira didn't come closer to threaten. Instead, she circled to the far side of the tree, examining the roots, sniffing the mud, studying how it had settled. She tilted her head and muttered, almost to herself, if we dig from this side, we might loosen it enough to lift one end. You expect me to dig beside you? Nura growled. I expect you to save your cub, Shira replied without hesitation. And I'll help you do it. The lioness's muscles stiffened, torn between pride and desperation. Every part of her body screamed that hyenas were liars, scavengers, untrustworthy. But one look at her cub's fading eyes was enough to silence all of that. She swallowed her rage. Fine, she said. But if you touch him, I won't, Shira interrupted gently. I promise. The word promise carried strange weight coming from her mouth, fragile but sincere. And so the impossible began. Side by side, lion and hyena clawed at the mud. The ground was thick and unyielding, clinging to their paws like quicksand. Every scoop of dirt came with a grunt. Every push against the wood sent shudders of pain through their bodies. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher, then began its descent. Kovu's breathing grew faint. Come on, Shira muttered, panting. Stay awake, little one. Nura paused for just a second to lick her cub's face, her rough tongue cleaning the mud from his nose. Hold on, my son, she whispered. You are not leaving me. The moment of tenderness made Shira's throat tighten. It reminded her of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, the ache of loss. She had once had pups of her own, but a drought and the hunger that followed had taken them one by one. She had learned that the world didn't reward love. It punished it, and yet here she was, fighting to save a lion's cub. Why are you helping me? Nura asked between breaths, her voice raw. Shira didn't look up. Because someone once helped me, she said simply. And I didn't deserve it either. Nura didn't reply, but her pace quickened. Together they worked until the first signs of dawn colored the horizon. The branch had begun to shift slightly, not enough to free Kovu, but enough to offer hope. On three, Shira said, her breath coming in short bursts. We pushed together hard. Nura nodded, bracing herself. 1, 2, 3. They pushed with everything left in them. Muscles strained, paws dug deep into the earth, teeth clenched. The branch groaned under the force. Mud cracked. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, with a deep, wet snap, the tree rolled just enough to reveal the cub's trapped body. Kovu let out a weak cry. He's free! Shira gasped. Nura wasted no time. She pulled her cub gently out of the mud, nuzzling him, licking his face as tears of relief filled her eyes. His tiny chest rose and fell, faint but steady. He was alive. For a few heartbeats, the two creatures simply stared at each other. Predator and scavenger, enemies by nature, standing in the glow of a sunrise that felt almost holy. Then the sound of distant laughter shattered the peace. Hyenas, not the same ones as before. This was a larger group, drawn by the scent of blood and the chaos of the night before. Shadows moved through the tall grass, closing in fast. Shira turned sharply, her ears flattening. They're coming, she said. Too many! Nura crouched low, baring her teeth. Then we fight. Shira looked at her, then at the cub in her paws. You can't fight with him in your mouth. You need to run, and leave you here? I've fought them before, Shira said. I can hold them off long enough for you to get clear. No, Nura snapped. I won't let you... Shira growled sharply, cutting her off. If you die, he dies. Go. The lioness hesitated, torn between duty and gratitude. Then, with one last look at the hyena who had become her ally, she scooped Kovu into her jaws and bolted toward the open plain. She returned to face the advancing pack. Her claws dug into the mud. She lowered her stance, the rising sun burning behind her, casting her shadow long across the ground. When the first hyena lunged, she met him head-on. The fight was brutal and quick. Teeth clashed, fur flew, and the air filled with snarls and blood. Shira fought like an animal possessed, not for food, not for dominance, but for something far greater, redemption. From the ridge ahead, Nura looked back once. She saw the chaos below, the blur of movement, the dust, the courage of the one she'd once called her enemy. Her throat tightened. Then she turned away, carrying her son into the safety of the sunrise. Behind her, Shira's roar echoed one last time, fierce, defiant, unbroken, a sound that would haunt the savannah for generations. And as the wind carried that roar across the plains, Even the circling vultures paused, as if to honor the hyena who had chosen love over instinct and mercy over survival. The morning sun painted the savannah in soft amber light, but Noura barely noticed its beauty. Her paws pounded against the wet earth, mud flying behind her as she ran with Kovu clutched tightly in her jaws. The cub whimpered faintly, his tiny body trembling with each jolt. Every sound, a rustle in the grass, a snapping twig, made her heart seize with fear. Behind her, faint and fading, came the echoes of battle. Hyenas snarled and howled, their laughter fractured by the deep growls of one of their own, Shira. The brave hyena who had turned against her kind now fought alone. Noura didn't want to leave her. Every instinct told her to turn back, but Kovu's shallow breathing reminded her why she couldn't. The lioness reached a cluster of tall boulders, their shadows still cool from the night. She set Kovu down gently beneath a narrow ledge. He blinked up at her, his eyes clouded but alive. "You're safe now," she murmured, her voice trembling. "You're safe, my love." But deep down, she didn't believe it. The distant cries grew louder, the kind that made the air feel heavy, thick with something final. Then came one last sound, unlike the rest, a roar, raw and powerful, filled with fury and heartbreak. And then, silence. Noura froze. Her breath hitched. She looked toward the horizon, where the light met the trees, and for a long moment she couldn't move. She knew what that silence meant. Shira was gone. The lioness closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against her cub's tiny body. For a creature she had once called an enemy, she now felt an ache that words could not hold. Kovu whimpered softly, and she lifted her head again. "We must go," she said. "We must live. For her." She picked him up once more and began walking east, toward a stretch of acacia trees that promised shade and safety. The savannah stretched endlessly before her, vast and merciless, yet somehow gentler now, as if even the wind mourned the hyena's sacrifice. Hours passed. The storm had left the ground uneven and treacherous, puddles reflecting the sky like broken mirrors. Her paws hurt with every step, but Noura didn't stop. She moved steadily, guided by instinct and by something more profound, gratitude. By midday, she found a patch of dry grass near a stream. She set Kovu down and began licking the mud and grime from his fur. The cub stirred weakly, his small chest rising and falling with effort. His leg, once trapped beneath the tree, was swollen and bruised. She touched it gently, wincing at his cry. "It's all right, my heart," she whispered. "You'll heal. You have to." Her gaze drifted to the horizon again. The plains were silent, save for the distant calls of hornbills and the soft murmur of the stream. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching, the kind that waited for weakness. Suddenly a rustle came from the nearby grass. Noura's body tensed instantly. She stepped in front of Kovu, her ears flattening, claws digging into the soil. The movement stopped. A pause, then from the tall grass a familiar sound broke through, not a snarl, not a laugh, a faint, pained growl. Noura's heart skipped. She turned toward the sound and froze. Out from the grass limped a figure, battered, bloodied, and barely standing. Shira, her fur was matted, one eye swollen shut, her left leg dragging behind her. She was covered in cuts, but she was alive. "Shira," Noura whispered, disbelief softening her voice. The hyena tried to grin, but it came out as a weak smirk. "You didn't think I'd let them have the last laugh, did you?" Noura rushed forward, stopping just inches away. For a moment the two predators simply looked at each other. Enemies no longer. "You fought them all?" Shira nodded, coughing weakly. "Most of them. Ran, the others won't be laughing anymore." Noura's eyes softened. "You saved us." Shira sank down slowly, her strength giving out. "You saved me first," she said faintly. "When you let me help, I'd forgotten what it felt like. To do something right." The lioness crouched beside her, lowering her massive head until it nearly touched Shira's shoulder. "Rest now," she said quietly. "You're safe here." Shira chuckled softly, a sound that turned into a rasp. "Safe in the savannah. That's a first. They stayed like that for a while, two souls bound not by species, but by something far deeper, the understanding that courage sometimes wears the face of mercy. As the day faded, Shira's breathing grew heavier. She lifted her gaze toward the sky, where the clouds had parted into streaks of orange and violet. "You know," she murmured, her voice barely above the wind, "my kind will never understand what I did." "Then they don't deserve to," Nura said. Shira smiled weakly. "Maybe, but you do. You understand." Nura's throat tightened. "Yes, I'm glad," Shira whispered, "that someone does." Her head lowered slowly until it rested against the grass. Her chest rose once, then again, and then no more. The world went silent. Nura closed her eyes. The lioness, who had lost everything, and the hyena who had found redemption in her final breath, both had changed the course of their kind's story forever. Kovu stirred again beside her, and Nura turned toward him. He looked up, blinking slowly, his small voice a fragile echo. "Mama!" She nuzzled him, pressing her nose gently to his. "Yes, my love. I'm here." The cub's eyes flicked toward Shira's still body. "She helped us?" "Yes," Nura whispered, her voice breaking. "She was brave." Kovu blinked, his gaze thoughtful. "Like you," Nura smiled faintly through her tears. "No, little one, braver." As night descended, she lay beside the hyena's body, her cub curled against her belly. The stars emerged slowly, their light shimmering on the quiet plains. Somewhere in the distance, a single hyena call echoed, low, mournful, and beautiful. Nura lifted her head toward the sound, her golden eyes glistening. "She's free now," she murmured. The cub yawned and nestled closer. When dawn came again, Nura stood tall. She nudged Shira's body gently into a shallow bed of leaves and covered her with earth and petals from a fallen acacia. It wasn't the burial of a predator. It was the resting place of a hero. Then, with Kovu limping beside her, Nura began walking east again, into the sun, into life, carrying with her the story of a hyena who had changed everything, and though the world would soon forget her name, the savannah never would. The wind would carry her memory in whispers, and lions would one day tell their cubs about the night a hyena taught them the true meaning of courage. The days that followed were drenched in silence. The storm had passed, the predators had scattered, and life on the savannah seemed to resume its endless rhythm. But for Nura and her cub, the world felt heavier. Every sunrise was quieter, every breeze colder. Shira's absence clung to them like the dust that never left the lioness's fur. Nura walked with her head high, but her heart low. Each step carried her further from the place where she had buried the hyena, and yet, somehow, every direction led her back to it in memory. Kovu limped beside her, growing stronger each day, his gait uneven, but his spirit alive. He would occasionally stumble, look up at her and smile. The cub didn't understand grief. He only knew that they had survived. They found shelter in a rocky den overlooking a watering hole. The view stretched far across the plains, the kind of place a lioness would normally claim proudly. But Nura made no roars to announce her dominance. She watched instead. She watched the zebras graze, the gazelles drink, the birds circle in lazy arcs. And sometimes, when the wind blew from the south, she could almost swear she heard the faint echo of a laugh. Not cruel, but kind. Shira's laugh. One evening, as the sky bled into violet and gold, Kovu looked up from where he was playing with a dry stick. "Mama," he said softly, "do you think the stars talk?" Nura glanced down at him. "Talk?" "Yes." His little tail twitched. "When it's quiet, I think I hear them." She smiled faintly. "Maybe they do. Maybe they talk to those who listen." He tilted his head. "Do you think she's up there?" The question hit her like a claw to the heart. She swallowed before answering. "Yes, my son. She's up there, watching over us." Kovu nodded solemnly, then looked back at the sky. "Then I'll listen harder." For a long while, mother and cub sat side by side, the savannah glowing under the starlight. The world was vast and indifferent, yet for a fleeting moment, it felt close, as if every creature that had ever loved or lost was connected by the same quiet thread. But peace never lasts long in the wild. 3 days later, as dawn broke pale and thin, Nura sensed movement near the watering hole. Her body tensed instinctively. From behind a cluster of thorn bushes, figures emerged, lions. 4 of them, her old pride. At their head was Baran, the dominant male who had once been her mate. His mane was thicker now, streaked with dust, his eyes as cold as the stones beneath his paws. Behind him, 2 lionesses and a younger male walked with the confidence of those who had never known hunger. Nura stepped forward cautiously, keeping her body between them and her cub. Baran stopped several feet away, studying her. "Nura," he said, his voice deep but emotionless. "You're alive." "I am," she replied coolly. His gaze shifted to the small figure half hidden behind her. "And that?" "My son," Baran frowned. "Your son? Or a stranger's?" Nura's eyes flashed. "Mine," he snorted softly. "You left us during the storm. We thought you were dead. You left us first," she snapped. "You took the pride and ran." A long silence hung between them. The other lionesses exchanged glances, uneasy. Finally, Baran's gaze softened just slightly. "You should come back," he said. "The cub can grow strong with the pride. Alone you'll both starve." Nura shook her head. "We'll manage." Baran's patience thinned. "The plains are not kind to those who defy the order. You're risking your cub's life." Her tail lashed once, sharp as a whip. "He's alive because I defied it." Baran's eyes narrowed. "And who saved you then?" "A hyena." The word dripped from his tongue like poison. The others chuckled nervously. Nura stepped closer, her shoulders squared. "Yes," she said. "A hyena. She saved us both." Baran laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "And you expect me to believe that?" "She gave her life for us," Nura said, her voice steady, her eyes blazing. "She was braver than any lion I've known." The laughter died instantly. Even Baran hesitated, the mockery fading from his face as he saw the conviction in hers. The younger male sneered. "You speak like a fool, lioness. A hyena is nothing." Nura turned on him, her roar slicing through the morning air. Birds exploded from the trees. "Enough," she thundered. "If you think honor belongs only to lions, then you've never seen the heart of another creature." The young male flinched, backing away. Even Baran took a step back. Silence stretched again, broken only by the wind moving through the grass. Finally, Baran spoke, quieter this time. "You've changed." "I've learned," she replied. "The world is not what we were taught. It's bigger and crueler, and sometimes kinder." Baran regarded her for a long moment, then turned away. "You're no longer part of the pride," he said coldly. "You walk alone." Nura nodded. "So be it." The lions left without another word, disappearing into the horizon. When they were gone, Kovu emerged from his hiding place. "Why didn't we go with them?" he asked softly. "Because strength isn't only in numbers," Nura said. "It's in knowing what's right and standing by it." Kovu looked at her, puzzled but trusting. That night the sky was clearer than it had been in weeks. The stars shimmered like tiny embers, burning brighter than before. Nura lay with her cub pressed close, watching the constellations drift above. "Do you see that one?" she said, pointing her nose toward a bright star near the horizon. "That's her, Shira." Kovu smiled sleepily. "She's watching us?" "Yes," Nura whispered. "Always." The cub yawned, resting his head on her paw. "Then maybe she can see that we're okay now." Nura looked at him, her chest swelling with pride and sorrow all at once. "Yes, my son, she can, and for the first time since the storm." The lioness allowed herself to close her eyes, not in fear, but in peace, because she knew, somewhere beyond the reach of predators and storms, a spirit laughed again under the stars, the laugh of a hyena who had changed the heart of a lion and the destiny of a cub who would one day rule with compassion instead of pride. In that silence, the savannah slept, but its memory lived on, a memory written not in roars or hunts, but in the quiet mercy that echoed long after the wind had moved on. Seasons passed. The rains returned, the rivers swelled, and the grasses grew tall once more. The scars left by the storm had faded, but in the quiet corners of the savannah, where the wind whispered secrets between the trees, the story of one lioness and one hyena still lived on. Noura's cub, Kovu, grew fast. His once scrawny legs had strengthened. The limp had faded into a faint, graceful sway. His mane was beginning to grow, soft and golden like the morning sun. But his eyes, those curious amber eyes, still carried the memory of that night. Every dawn, Noura led him to the edge of their rocky den, overlooking the valley below. Together they would watch the world awaken. Herds of wildebeests moving like shadows, elephants trailing clouds of dust, and vultures circling far above. Life had returned to its rhythm. But Kovu often looked at his mother and asked, "Do you think the hyena's spirit can see us from here?" Noura always smiled. "The savannah remembers her, my son. The wind carries her laughter." He would close his eyes then, listening, and sometimes, if the breeze was right, he swore he could hear it too. That strange, haunting laugh carried faintly through the grass, but the savannah was never kind for long. One morning, Noura woke to the sound of distant roars, lions, many of them. She climbed to the ridge and saw smoke rising from the western plains. Not the smoke of fire, but dust, thick and golden, stirred up by chaos. Baran's pride, they had invaded the territory of a rival pride, and the fight was spilling across the land like wildfire. The wind carried the scent of blood and fury. Kovu stood beside her, his tail flicking nervously. "What's happening?" "War," Noura said quietly. "They fight for land that belongs to none of them." He looked up at her. "Should we help?" Her heart tightened. She wanted to keep him safe, to shelter him from the cruelty of their kind. But something in his eyes, the same quiet strength she had once seen in Shira, told her that he needed to see the truth of the world for himself. "We will watch," she said, "and we will learn." They approached carefully, staying low in the tall grass, until they reached a hill overlooking the chaos below. Dust filled the air as lions clashed, claws, roars, and snarls blending into one violent storm. Among them was Baran, fierce as ever, his mane stained with blood. His pride fought with the reckless arrogance of those who believed they could never fall. Kovu's gaze hardened. "Why do they fight like this?" "Because they believe power is all that matters," Noura said. "But one day you will show them another way." He turned to her, uncertain. "Another way?" "Yes," she whispered. "Strength that protects instead of destroys. The kind of strength that saves." Her words hung in the air, and then something caught her attention. A roar different from the rest, one of pain. She looked closer and saw a young lioness trapped beneath a rock, crushed as the ground gave way during the battle. The others fought on, ignoring her cries. Without thinking, Noura bounded down the hill. "Mama!" Kovu called, but she didn't stop. She reached the wounded lioness in seconds. The rock was heavy, smaller than the acacia that had trapped Kovu once, but still crushing enough to steal the breath from her lungs. "Hold on," Noura said. She pushed her shoulder against the rock, growling with effort. The stone didn't move. She pushed harder, her claws digging deep into the earth, her muscles trembling with strain. Then Kovu appeared beside her. "I can help." "No," she said firmly. "Stay back." But he didn't listen. Together they heaved. The rock groaned and rolled just enough for the lioness to crawl free. Gasping, Noura bent down to inspect her. A torn leg, blood, but still alive. "Go," Noura urged. "Get to the trees. You're safe now." The lioness looked up, confused. Why help me?" Noura met her eyes. "Because once someone helped me." Before the lioness could reply, another roar split the air. Baran was charging toward them, his eyes blazing. "Noura!" he thundered. "You interfere again?" Noura stood tall, her fur bristling. "This fight is madness, Baran. It ends now." He circled her, his claws scraping the dirt. "You've gone soft, living with ghosts and mercy. And you've gone blind," she said sharply. "You think being king means destroying everything you touch." Baran lunged. Kovu leapt between them before Noura could move. The young lion roared, not with the fury of dominance, but with the power of conviction. The sound stopped Baran mid-stride. "You'll kill her," Kovu shouted. "The lioness who once stood beside you, who only ever protected your kind." Baran growled. "You're her cub." "Yes," Kovu said, "and I'm everything you'll never be." The pride had stopped fighting now, their attention drawn to the confrontation. The silence that followed was deeper than any roar. Noura stepped forward, her eyes locked on Baran's. "You fight for power, but it will never make you strong. I fight for those who can't, and that's what makes me unstoppable." Baran hesitated, his breathing heavy. For a moment his pride, his entire kingdom, hung in the balance. Then with a final snarl he turned and stalked away. The lions watched him go, unsure of what had just happened. Noura exhaled slowly, turning to her son. "You see, Kovu," she said softly, "power fades, but compassion, it lasts." That night they returned to their den beneath a sky so clear it seemed alive. The stars shimmered brighter than ever, scattered across the heavens like the eyes of the ancestors. Kovu lay beside his mother, his gaze fixed on the brightest star in the east. "Do you think she saw us?" "Yes," Noura whispered. "She saw you, my brave one. You carry her spirit now." Kovu smiled faintly. "Then maybe the savannah won't forget?" "It won't," Noura said, "because it has a new story now. Yours." She pressed her muzzle against his and closed her eyes, letting the wind wash over them. In its gentle hum, she could almost hear it again, the echo of Shira's laughter, fading into the night like a promise kept. And as the stars turned slowly above, the savannah slept, but this time it was not a silence of fear. It was peace. The kind of peace that grows only when the heart learns that courage and kindness are the same thing. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the wild, where lions and hyenas once clashed, a single voice whispered through the grass, half a laugh, half a sigh, carrying the story of a lion, a hyena, and the love that changed the world forever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes that compassion is the truest strength. Because in every act of mercy, no matter how small, the wild finds its heart again.